The things about Pulsechain that I do like, of course, are hopeful for entrepreneurism, for successful products or projects from Ethereum to either migrate because those developers have put their own sweat and equity, social equity, their social capital, their fiscal capital. They put those things into creating a product, and they have chosen sometimes only on Ethereum, sometimes on multiple chains to deploy their contracts or their work. If they don't migrate over themselves, then I definitely want those similar products available on Pulsechain. I think it helps the ecosystem as a whole. Still, that's not conflict with my position of hopefully adopting Hex further and growing the community around this.
As you touched on, they're not going to have the AMM fixer bot. They're not going to have Pulsex. They're not going to have Pulse Ramp, right? These are three major components that differentiate from, ETH-POW and ETH-Fair. Because without those components, right, it was really difficult to be able to bridge any assets onto on or off of ETH-Fair or ETH-POW. You had to go and try to work with the Block Explorer directly to operate Uniswap initially until someone threw up a front end. And all those things were missing on day one. We'll have it day one on Pulsechain, and that will be a game changer, right? Having access to the liquidity, having the liquidity rebalanced, having access to a bridge, the easy bridge from Ethereum to Pulsechain, or after that, once the multi-chain bridge goes live, then from practically any chain onto Pulsechain allows easy access for folks to come in. So those are all major components that those other implementations didn't have either. So you kind of have to look at the whole ecosystem.
Question: we've heard for almost a year and a half now, which I'm fine with. It's so close. It's so close. And obviously we had a few massive changes. Amazing news with this whole internal private testnet for V3. And obviously Brett Tepp came out and said, "Oh, it is actually close now." What does that mean? Does that mean 6 months, or is it really we don't know? With my line of work that I'm in, I'm really good at eating shit sandwiches, but I want to be told ideally that I'm eating a shit sandwich, and I will eat that shit sandwich.
I guess that's why my spaces are becoming valuable, and I suggest that you come back because I can tell you shit too. And look, reality is that, and I do believe that their Binance fork was ready to be deployed, but then ETH 2.0 was announced in May that it was becoming live, and there was no guarantee on when ETH 2.0's merge was going to happen. The fact that they pivoted last minute just showcases that they truly believe ETH 2.0 is the better consensus model. And there's many things that, again, are better. So for instance, the Binance fork, there was 33 validators, and that opens yourself up to other issues where if you have 33 validators, they can come to a mutual agreement or a consensus within themselves to halt the chain, because you open yourself up to a smaller amount of people. Where if you have a validator network with thousands to hundreds of thousands of validators, you have a truly decentralized, unstoppable chain. So the changes that they made were for decentralization and security. But reality is V3 is a brand new testnet for their new consensus model. The timeline to how long that testnet has to run, that's extremely speculation. Given that there would be no bugs, for instance, no issues found with their new consensus model, you can speculate that 3 to 4 months is enough running time for them to verify that. It's hard when you aren't privy to the development. So for instance, being on a development team myself, without being privy to the testing and their current testing and the current bugs and the current issues that they're facing within their contracts currently, you don't actually know truly at any point in time where they're at. So given that no bugs are found, I don't think Pulsechain would be that far out.
Okay, if they are like 150 projects on Pulsechain, don't you think that those devs, because they must have more than 150 devs, they could help not on the main development team of Pulsechain, but working aside, helping out the code to make it better, and then we can move a little bit faster so they can help checking the bugs and the problems to help out how to fix them.
See, the challenge with development is kind of similar to having a baby. You can't add 3 more women and have the baby faster. The baby's going to come in 9 months, no matter what you do, right? There's a limit to how many heads and bodies you can throw at the problem before you lose efficiency and you're creating more overhead and more work and less, accomplishing less. Right. So a lot of times, smaller, more efficient, agile teams will get more done than massive teams of people who, in many cases, might not necessarily be qualified to do the level of work that is required to do what this team is doing. Right. Being able to code in Solidity is one thing. Being able to code in JavaScript to build the front ends and to design, backends and whatnot for a contract running on, the chain is one thing. Building the actual clients that will run the blockchain, right? That's an entirely different set of skills and knowledge that is required to be able to operate at that level. And that's why, when Richard says it's very difficult to find the right kind of people that he's looking for to do the work that he wants to do, because he's looking for these like 1 in 100,000, 1 in a million type, developers that are extremely hard to find that operate at that level to be able to get the work done accurately, cleanly, effectively, etc. Right? So while I appreciate the idea of being able to have more teams contribute, sadly, what you would probably run into is more delays and maybe even sloppier code than just waiting for the team that's currently working on it to hammer it out. Now, the good thing is, based on what we've heard and seen, it does look like we're closer than we may have assumed prior to that latest update. So, obviously we don't know exact timeframes, but, knowing that they have these clients already integrated, that they are running them in a private test net, and that they are standing up the launching pad to be able to set up validators quick and easy. These are all very, very promising updates. So it's good to see that progress.
And just to add before Funding Gym goes on, and that's not to say that's not possible after it's live, because once it's live and the source code is available, doesn't stop anyone from submitting code for consideration. So that's a possibility once it's live.
Good point.
So there's challenges. The challenges are navigating the narrative around sacrifice expectation, the narrative around SEC or promise of future value, things like that, right? So when one of the speakers earlier was saying about, can we get updates from Richard about what's going on or direction of developers that he may or may not have hired, all those types of things like that, that does set up legal restriction about what he can and can't say. And so it is my opinion, completely opinion, that Richard has publicly disengaged in a lot of ways and only has promoted his own personal brand or his outrage or whatever you want to call his past year since basically the Pulsechain narrative launched July of 21. So what's great is there are, as far as publicly declared, around 150 products or projects that would like to have a low-cost L1 and a DEX built around having incentive of participating in volume of transactions and those sorts of things. Those are great because I think that's what's brought a lot of developers and people to the front, publicly declaring their intention, right? That's wonderful. People like Liquid Loans or other products as well that are here in this room and in the future will listen to this. It's great because you have financial incentives. However, right now, like Richard in the past has commented about Ethereum having a bug bounty program and that Bitcoin does not. However, when testnet V1 on the ETH 2.0, whether they call it V3 or not, effectively is a different consensus, it's different code altogether. And they, supposedly had found errors in Binance Smart Chain's code to make the pivot worthwhile and more secure and all these other things. I don't know that Binance has a bug bounty program, but you have to look at what's the incentive. Richard is an absolutely loved person and an absolutely hated person by different people that see threat or boom from his products, right? So up until there's actually launch, I don't think legally that he could offer, or OA or some, whoever the coders are can offer a bug bounty program. So there is a window where potentially once it is launched, voluntarily with his own funds, his own intention, whether he chooses to follow through or not, on launching an L1 and a DEX and all these things we've heard about, his voluntarism. There's restrictions on what he can and can't say, and there's restrictions about what he can and can't publicly do or back channel, even communicate. It is dependent on people having a social capital risk, like people that have been, like Katie, myself, Sloth, anybody that's in this room that is public facing. It is part of our social capital at risk. And whether or not the sacrifice is for donation or no intention of profit from the work of others, whatever those narratives are, we can't really count that legally or otherwise. Sacrifice means sacrifice. So there's a lot of landmines that someone has to navigate. And it's great that we have this community of developers, enthusiasts, social commentators, influencers, and things like that to have social capital at risk. That's what's at risk. Your brand, your integrity, your accountability about what you say, about what you intend to do on if an L1 launches, right? There's a lot of ifs. And right now, Richard is the least able or, not even incentivized, but the least able to communicate with us. It is these developers that do understand code. It is peer-to-peer review. When there's a V1 that we can poke holes in, that is the best time to have developers and enthusiasts participate. V1, the Ethereum 2.0 fork, potentially with your tokens on chain and NFTs and ERC, PRC 721s and PRC 20s. That's the time for us as enthusiasts to play the game theory of ROI. But it is the developers that have, intention, publicly they said, to build something on a low cost, low transaction Ethereum fork. It is their responsibility in a lot of ways because they have social capital at risk. That's really where it has to be framed by every one of these Twitter spaces. It's very important. I'm super happy that people understand code and that they have privy to GitHub and GitLab and all these other kinds of things to say, this is what's launching. Here's an Explorer. Here's what a DEX is going to look like. Here's a screenshot that's been shared publicly. But until it actually launches as a test net, those are screenshots. They may or may not be real. I'm not fudding. I'm just saying there's restrictions on what can and can't be declared by the actual people that have keys to the code and can launch the code potentially, in a voluntary way. So
Toshi Flow, my brother, has brought me into this business, and we baby boomers are very skeptical. If it's true what I read, that only 20% of crypto money comes from America, I could believe it. And if that's true, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong about that when I'm done here, but that is such a market that we have got to get involved in crypto. But it screams of scam. It screams of illegitimacy. It screams of FTX. It screams of all of that and the rest of it that's going. Most people on the street today in America think that crypto is dead. My wife's given up on me. She says it's never going to happen. You hear all this stuff, but we need someone like you, Katie. Keep it up. I'm really complimenting all of you and many others. I know Long Vacation as well. These are very smart people, all of you. It blows us away, but we baby boomers have a lot of money in America. And you want us putting more and more money on Pulsex and Pulsechain specifically, not the Bitcoins of the world or the meme coins, but something that has such amazing potential that I think, from what little I know, as a real student of this all, is really setting a new mark, a new pathway to legitimate DeFi crypto is really, earth shattering. It really is. And we got to fight for this because at 62, I've been lied to every single decade I'm alive in America. The politicians and the system, they lie to you. So we need a money system, a monetary system that we could support our families, protect our freedoms in every country. I love all you Europeans. You are the greatest. You guys are fighting a good fight over there right now. Keep it going. And keep this crypto going because we all need it. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back on Twitter, I think tomorrow, Katie, and I'll comment on all your great stuff. Thank you for all the positive news.
I
Good
appreciate
night,
you,
everybody.
Michael. And that is one of the best things about Pulsechain moving forward, especially in this new consensus model and having the ability to have so many validators and truly being decentralized, is the fact that this is a blockchain that is not going to be able to lie to you. This is a blockchain that's never going to be able to be stopped, tampered with, or have any form of censorship on it. And that's where the execution layer comes in again, because prior in proof of work, the validators and the miners, they get to see the contents of the block. They get to choose the contents of the block to then authenticate it. Where in proof of stake Ethereum and in Pulsechain, that's gone because the contents of the block is filled by the execution layer, and the consensus layer just gets to authenticate that block. So they choose the block with the highest bid, and then it's not until they actually choose that block do they get to see the contents of it. So there still is, like, so for instance, MEV attacks, they're not protected from it. So MEV is just the ability to arb, where a sophisticated miner on proof of work, they had the ability to constantly arb blocks because A, they can see the contents of the block, and B, they can put their transaction prior to other transactions that are going through in that block to then just constantly arb. That's not necessarily gone in our new consensus model. So the engine API that runs the execution layer, there is still the ability to put a slot in there to MEV attack, but it's mitigated to a strong enough standpoint that it's safe to say that the validators in our consensus also can't act as ill will against the consensus model itself where you could in the prior one. So yeah, Pulsechain is definitely going to shape DeFi as we know it today. And it's especially going to rattle other blockchains because you finally have a digital ledger technology that can't be tampered with.
I'd also like to thank Mike and Toshi for working long and hard with Boxable to get them to, launch or plan to launch their NFT collection on Pulse Chain specifically, right? They could have gone to any other chain, but you worked with Boxable to create this new concept of an NFT collection that represents physical homes that can be manufactured and delivered to you. It's a new paradigm of manufacturing and production and pre-sales. And I'm excited because this is coming to Pulse Chain first. This is not on Ethereum. It's not on Solana. It's, this is a great example of some new amazing opportunities that teams that are building on Pulse Chain that are trying to bring the Pulse Chain, right? And I know you, Mike, and Toshi, you both have done an amazing amount of work to figure this out, to work the deals, to get everything aligned, and we really appreciate everything both of you have been doing. So thank you so much, man.
Yes, I have to echo that.
Thank you. Thank you.
For those in the room that don't know, Michael and Toshi Flow are the people that have been working to collaborate with Boxable Tiny Homes to allow for 10,000 tiny homes to be sold on the blockchain through redeemable NFTs. So these two are the two that have been putting in all that hard work to build connections and networking. And yes, they are bringing it to Pulse Chain. So there will be a VIP queue where people can come to the blockchain and buy these tiny homes to jump in front of a queue of over 200,000 people now to have their tiny home put first in production. And these two are Pulse Chain heroes, in my opinion, because they've collaborated with a centralized multi-million-dollar company and they're bringing it to Pulse Chain, and it's massive. Boxable Home is working with Elon Musk currently, so there is big names associated with Boxable Homes as well. And Boxable, in my opinion, is the form of NFTs that we've all been waiting for, something redeemable with true value, with true utility. So I'm extremely looking forward to Boxable Homes, and I thank you two greatly.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, LV and Katie.
Richard Hart, he has a lot of swag, he's got the drip, he's got that Ric Flair drip. And, I'm excited to see what Pulse Chain is doing because decentralization is very important. Avalanche is, they say, oh, yeah, we're decentralized, but we chose who is randomized. And, Solana, one day frozen, one day paused, one day unpaused. So what Pulse Chain is doing is very exciting. I'm going to watch this, I'm going to see what Richard Hart is up to. And, yes, it's exciting to watch this progress.
I think the important thing is, I know it's been a long wait, right? This community has been waiting for Pulse Chain for literally, 2 years, it feels like. But knowing that the end may be soon, the end might be better than what we originally thought it could be. That's the hopium and the copium that we kind of need as a community right now, because, that patience will pay off. Right. And even if, nothing, the market isn't being timed, the fact that it aligns to as crypto is starting to perhaps start trend slowly out of the bear or start clawing its way out of the bottom, maybe not. is also a good sign, because if Pulsechain launched a year and a half ago, it would have had a pretty challenging beginning. So I think in the end, things will work out.